Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out. Once again, it feels like deja vu saying this as we just wrapped up the Q&A portion of our time here at Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions office. But Frank, it's great to see you again too. Thank you for having me, looking dapper as usual. And I just want to get into starting off with a reflection of last year. I know you did a long piece with Umar from Box Nation, so I won't cover too much old ground, but just a reflection summarising your 2024.
I thought it was an exceptional 2024, both here and both with the shows in Riyadh. Just, for our boxers, the majority of them came through. A couple of them fell over, but all in all, a very, very good year.
What would you say then would be the goal for 2025? Would you put a mission statement out there for where you want to be at the end of the year?
We've announced some shows already, which I think show what we're all about. Great shows. And we're about to announce some more. We're obviously ending our relationship with TNT in March, and we start with our new broadcaster, DAZN. In April, we'll be putting a big show on for the very first show. And I suppose our mission statement is to show what we're all about on DAZN and broadening our horizons in other countries and developing and bringing through talent like we always do. I mean, we're in a very, very good position at this moment in time. We have some fabulous, fabulous existing champions. We've got some fighters who I do believe will come through and win world titles this year. And we've got a great wealth of young talent that we're nurturing. And I think will make their names towards the end of next year. And certainly 2026, they'll be winning titles themselves.
Just mentioning they're broadening your horizons to other territories. Last year came with a couple of signings of American talents. Is it America somewhere you want to get more of a foothold in? Will there be shows in America under the Queensberry banner?
We were looking at that, but we're making an announcement in due course and in other countries. Yeah.
One of the mission statements from a few years back was to get more of a foothold into the heavyweight division. Do you feel like you have that on lock now and that Queensberry Promotions are the real commanders of the heavyweight division, and how pivotal has that been to your business?
I think we're very, very strong in the heavyweight division. Our mission statement went back, as I think I've said before, in that we was it 5-6 years ago decided what direction we was going in and how we wanted and how we felt was the way forward, and we secured and done that. Most of the heavyweights with us, except for Mr. Usyk. But any big fights he wants, and you're looking at the ratings, most of our guys are in positions where they're either going to become mandatories or indeed are mandatories. So all roads lead to Queensberry as far as the heavyweights division is concerned. And it's exciting times, very, very exciting times for heavyweights. But we've done that in a few other divisions as well, and you'll see over the next 12 months where some of the talent will come through and establish themselves.
Getting into some of the action there, and of course the fallout from Usyk Fury 2 was that Tyson Fury did again lose to OIeksandr Usyk, and now the decision is to whether Tyson does continue or not. What's the process there with him? What conversations have you had with him as to his want to continue?
None. I spoke to him, I think maybe once, maybe twice since the fight. He's with his family, which is where he wants to be, where he should be, enjoying his time with his family. He's been in training, 2 long training camps, very hard and tough training camps, certainly the first one. And whatever he's going to do, if indeed he's going to do, if indeed he does continue boxing, is a decision that he's got to make himself, along with the help from his family. And I certainly would not try and convince him to carry on boxing or tell him to retire. That's a choice he must make. He's a young man. The 2 tough fights he had with Usyk, they were tough fights for both those guys. There wasn't a lot in it. I'm giving my views what I thought the decision was, but they were very close fights. And there will always be a close fight between the two of them. Tyson's a great, great fighter, the same as Usyk. For anybody, they're going to be a handful. And all these young bucks who are coming through and want to establish themselves, they're going to have to fight them down the road if indeed both of them carry on.
Yeah, I do hear, when I hear interviews from fighters specifically, they see it as a lot closer fight than it was apparently to the 3 judges sitting ringside there.
Everybody does. I genuinely did think he won it. But I've watched it back, and it was a close fight. My gripe is not against who won the fight. It was the judge's scoring of the fight. It is impossible, and I'm banging on about it again. I said I wouldn't talk about this anymore in 2025, but it's impossible on one of the judges' card that he could not have won one round in the last 7 rounds, and the other 2 only gave him a round apiece. I've been in boxing a long time. And I'm biased, but I don't believe that was the case. And I've spoken to a lot of people, like you said, a lot of fighters have said it's a close fight. I've not seen anybody saying, he pissed it or whatever. It was a close fight. And a lot of people who are neutral, certainly in America, good judges, they said it was nothing. A couple of them actually said it was a draw. Like Tom Hauser again said he felt it was a draw.
Yeah, I spoke to Tom and he said it was a. He said it was a draw. Yeah.
There you go.
I just want to go back to that fight week, and there was some conversation surrounding, as there was quite a bit from the first fight, about the corner and whether John Fury would be in the corner. It turned out he wasn't in the corner. Do you know as to why John wasn't in the corner on the night?
No, that was their choice. That was what they all chose to do. They felt that was the best thing to do, or the way forward, and that's how it turned out to be. It was, for me, it's not controversial. Tyson's a very astute guy. He's not stupid. He knows his boxing. He's got a good boxing brain, and that's how it turned out to be. But what everybody's got to understand is his dad. It's his dad. He's close to his father, and his father's close to him, and the father loves him, and he loves his dad. So it is what it is. But the second fight, the team was what it was. The training camp went extremely well, and the result is what it is.
I do want to follow the thread through and ask the question: do you feel like there was anything missing from John Fury not being there? Maybe a bit of imposition drive.
Where'd you go? Where'd you go with that? Everyone said, "Oh, he shouldn't be there." Now, why weren't he there? He should have been. So, at the end of the day, Tyson is a mature heavyweight fighter. He's not some young kid. He's been around the block. He's done it. He's a 2-time world champion. He's overcome some serious demons in his life outside of boxing. He's not a fool, and he done what he had to do. And even with all those trials and tribulations he's had, being bipolar and so forth, some of the things he said people don't like, they've got to take into consideration when you're bipolar, you just say something that's in your head. You just say what's there. You say it's in your head. But actions speak louder than words. You look at both of those fights. What's the first thing they do after that fight when that bell goes? Yeah. Kiss each other. Giving them a kiss, hugging, talking. That is what those two guys are, two absolute warriors. And you see them, I know there's mutual respect for each other. I know there's a feeling. I know down the years to come, those two are going to be like that. They'll be like that because they shared they shared 2 historical moments in world boxing in the 21st century. They were brilliant fights. Whoever you support, whoever you like them or you don't like them, whether John Fury is there or he's not there, whatever, they were 2 great fights, and it took 2 great fighters to make those fights happen.
Outside of Tyson Fury's boxing ability, he's got an ability himself to just sell a fight from some of the words he say, like you mentioned. Some do like it, some don't like it, sure, but he sells a fight. He's very capable of doing that. If the lay of the land is that he doesn't choose to continue, that's boxing losing one of the brightest lights. Does boxing, in some senses, need Tyson Fury to continue to fight because of the big nights, the big appeal, the big broad appeal that he brings to the sport?
Look, what boxing needs and what Tyson needs may be 2 different things. What Tyson needs is to have peace of mind, and what Tyson needs is to have a life outside of boxing. And whether that's now or a year's time or 2 years' time, it will happen, because that's what happens in boxing. There comes a point in your career, and it's the fighter who normally knows first. It's the last to admit it. Comes to a point where your career in the ring ceases. Boxing does need him, and he would be great. I would work with him. I'd like him to come and work with Queensberry, work with me outside the ring after he finishes, because he can contribute a lot to boxing. He's a smart guy. He's nobody's fool. He's a smart guy. He knows his fights, knows his boxing. And for me, it'd be boxing's loss for him to step away from the sport completely.
It's like a semi-promoter, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a heartbeat. You know, I've been, you know, when he came back from all these trials and tribulations, we got together, and it was good for both of us. It was good for him, and it was good for me, and it worked and it gelled. And I really, really, really have a lot of time for him, and I have a lot of. I'm very fond of him, and I just want the best for him. And as I say, if he wants to fight on, I'll be there with him. If he wants to retire, I will say, God bless you, go and enjoy your retirement. Whatever he chooses to do. One thing I won't be doing is encouraging him in any way to make either of those decisions. They've got to be his decision.
We covered this a little bit in the Q&A as one of the Seconds Out listeners did ask this, but we've seen the video now of Anthony Joshua. He's mentioned he's over in Nigeria, I believe it is, and he said, look, his mission statement for the year is I want a belt, but I also want to land that Tyson Fury fight. And that's a fight that has been missed for a number of years, and a fight that would be terrible if boxing fans didn't get that fight, especially over here in the UK. Firstly, does it feel as big as it did before? Would it be fair to say it might not be as big as it once was?
I just feel it's a fight that everybody would watch, everyone want to see. It'll just take over because of the natural rivalry over the years. And it's not like one guy's, you know, like 10 years older than the other, and, you know, it's a young guy and an old guy. They're both more or less the same age. So for me, it'd be if it happens, you know, Wembley's sold out if that fight happens.
How difficult is it sometimes to just match the right fighters at the right time? We're talking about Fury and AJ getting that fight, and look, obviously sometimes that boat has been missed there, but when you're talking about two big, just to be as blunt as it is, cash cows in the game there, it must be difficult to actually get them to sign pen to paper sometimes.
Not really. You know, sometimes circumstances make them happen on the right time. And also now now it's going to be easier to make a lot of fights because there's the fact that the DAZN, most of the promoters, most of these fighters will be fighting on the one channel. So it should be easier to make the fights.
Yeah, talking of that platform DAZN there, you've made the decision now to sign with DAZN, leaving TNT and moving over to DAZN in the very near future. April, I believe it is? April, yeah. Is it competition or is it teamwork with Matchroom now? How does that dynamic work between you two?
Competition. Always be about competition. And working together, there's no problem with that because the working together has created fights that are competitive. And fights that maybe have never got made, but no, we're competitive. We're at DAZN to be the top promoters on DAZN. We're not going to DAZN to make up numbers. That's why we're there. We will put on the best shows. That's our mission statement.
With the recent cooperation between yourself, Matchroom Boxing, and Eddie Hearn specifically, who over the years you two have had your back and forths, of course that happens across the YouTube outlets. But do you feel that the friendship, I guess, the teamwork and relationship might not have got to the place if it wasn't for the move from Saudi Arabia to come into boxing? And Eddie kind of mentions that it's got the two heads together and forced you into a room to have that conversation. But do you think that conversation would have happened outside of Saudi Arabia's introduction to the sport?
No. Saudi, His Excellency in the Riyadh season made it happen.
I remember when it was the COVID period and Queensberry Promotions had put out the 5 versus 5 that you'd wanted to do.
We've always thought about it. You know, it's always been a thing, you know, which I always felt had a lot of legs, and George felt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, during COVID, we did broach the subject.
But this is the thing. So we come out of COVID, and I remember speaking to Eddie Hearn, we were in a scrum, and I said to Eddie, look, you come out of COVID now, but both of you seemed like you wanted to have that conversation and talk, and that meeting just never happened. It slipped to the wayside almost.
There was never a meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Conveniently, inconveniently, is always crossing the streets and maybe never saw quite the glance of each other's eye. But now that you're kind of working together, what's that relationship been like?
It's been good, you know. I mean, it's a working relationship. I mean, we're not in each other's pockets from my perspective. I mean, I speak to Eddie. I can't be honest, I don't speak to him that much, but, you know, when we do meet and whatever, it's pretty good. And the same with Frank Smith. I think he's his CEO, isn't he?
Yeah.
Frank, who's a good guy. But George has more. My son George, who's the CEO of Queensberry, they have more, probably a daily dialogue, more than I do. That's for sure.
That Matchroom versus Queensberry 5v5, first time round, ended up in a resounding victory for Queensberry Promotions. You had the conversation as well in the Q&A for the second iteration of the 5 versus 5 there. Can you say as to any of the fights, any returning fighters from the first fight as to who might be in the second iteration of it?
It's all about picking the weights. We'll pick 2 weights, they'll pick 2 weights, and His Excellency will pick 1 weight. So let's see what the weights are first of all.
Well, what's the weight you have in mind? You've got 2 of them and you're right here.
I'll tell you, one of them will be the heavyweight. Mm-hmm. No-brainer for us, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just speaking about the industry as a whole, and first of all, we talked about your mission statement earlier as to getting a stronghold within the heavyweight division, but if you rewind in those COVID periods and obviously maybe the promoter Cold War between yourself and Eddie Hearn, there was obviously a lot of conversation as to where each other was standing within the UK and abroad. My question here is longevity in the sport, what does it take? And with the introduction of other younger promoters who have their bit between the teeth just like yourself, do you see yourself outrunning some of the younger promoters in the game?
Well, longevity is about living a long time. That helps. Look, we just keep doing what we're doing. We've always done. We've been very successful over the years. Like everybody, you have your ups and downs, but we've been very successful. We've probably worked with every single major fighter, or probably 99% of any major fighter in the UK, and some from around the world. And we launched a Showbox series in America. We had regular dates on HBO and Showtime. So we've done, we've had some dates on the ESPN, but we had a lot of big dates, and built a lot of fighters up, and it's something we enjoy doing. And we as I say, we had our sort of mission statement 5-6 years ago, and it came through. I mean, when you think Daniel Dubois, we signed him 10 years ago. 10 years. Is a long time. That's when we identified him. Moses has been with us for 3 years. We identified him before, which is a while ago. So that was our commitment, and that was before Riyadh happened. And now Riyadh season happened. I mean, it's been amazing, been unbelievable. The opportunities for the fighters, for the promoters, getting big fights on, competitive fights, and we're blessed because we got fighters that we can put into competitive fights.
Talking about the Riyadh season, look, huge positives in terms of the fights that have been made that weren't being made before, the conversations that we've been had, cooperations that have been had before, but some suggest about the detriment it might have to the UK scene. And you've been always committed to the UK scene. Your goal shows, Magnificent 7 shows. Do you share any of the feeling that for some that the shows might...
They're great shows. I mean, you look at the shows we've delivered in 2024 in the UK. They've been brilliant shows. Absolutely brilliant shows. I mean, you look at Joe Joyce against Derek Chisora. What a cracking fight that was. You look at the show that we did, the Magnificent, a couple of them we've done. I mean, the Magnificent 7 shows. They've been brilliant shows. You look at the show up in Liverpool with our Liverpool fighters. Just brilliant fights. Nick Bourne and the team, they've been fabulous. So they haven't been lost out. They have appeared. And then you look at the Riyadh season show at Wembley, which was a brilliant night, a great night, and fabulous fights. So I think all in all, it's just got better and better, and the quality's got better. And the shows we've got coming up in the UK from, I think it's the first big show, was it in February up in Manchester? From that show onwards, look at the fights that we're putting together. They're fabulous cards.
You've always been able to navigate those choppy waters when it comes to the boxing scene. How difficult a prospect do you think it would have been if Turki Alalshikh didn't come into boxing? How difficult would the competition have been to get Queensberry Promotions to where it is right now if there wasn't that influence? Well,
the fighters we had signed. The fighters that have been fighting our sort of marquee fighters were already signed, so they fought out there. What's happened is that we've got him into some of the fights we've been trying to get him into, which has been brilliant. It's been fabulous. And he's been fabulous for him. We all know it. He's a massive boxing fan. He loves it. He showed that by investing in buying Ring magazine now, and he's relaunched that. Is it 102, 103 years old now? It's just that's his commitment to the sport. That's what's so good about it, because he's such a fan. We all get on well because we're fans. You're a fan at the end of the day. Sure. It's what we do all the time. Mm-hmm. As much as you do your interviews, on the night you're sitting there watching the fights because you're a massive fan. Mm-hmm. That's what we are. Mm-hmm. And he's a great fan.
A little plug for the fans, if you haven't seen that Q&A there. Going on to, gotta get that in, Matt. Talking about Eddie, he's had a bit of an interesting last couple of years in boxing, with a lot of kind of, I don't know how you'd say, maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the sport. Do you see potentially, I mentioned there about outrunning other promoters, just more of the kind of celebrity appearances, I guess. Recently he was on what's that show called? Question of Sport as well too. Oh, really? Yeah, I'm not saying that you wouldn't get a slot there, Frank. Absolutely, I'm sure there'd be.
I've done it.
Oh, you have already? How many times? I'm sure you have. But is that one of those things where you see the direct competition as you'll still be there when they won't be?
No, I got to be honest. I don't even think about it. I just think to myself. I only think about what we're doing. I don't sit here thinking, what is he doing? What's this one doing? I think about what we've got, and they're our troops. What we're doing with our troops, how we're going to deploy them, what fights we're going to put them in. That's what we do. What the other side, what our I can't say enemies, but what our adversaries are doing. That's their business. I don't get in. I've never have thought about that. I always think about what we're doing, and provided we know what we're doing and we're successful. That's all that counts, because we're good at what we're good, and I think we're the best at what we do. Eddie's very good at what he does, very good. He works very hard, and you're right. He does promote himself, and he likes that, and he enjoys that side of it. That's fine. I mean, I suppose when I was younger a bit, maybe I did, but I'm much rather now these days. I work hard. We work 24/7. Because of different time zones and different countries we deal with. Most of our shows are on a Saturday evening, so you work. You're working long hours. So my downtime, whatever it is, I want to be enjoying myself. Yeah. I'll go to the football. I go and have me nice long lunches, and then they can wheel me in and put me in the cupboard and get me out in the morning.
This is the thing, because Top Rank and Bob Arum are now talking about moving over to DAZN, and Bob Arum's into his 90s. Wouldn't you rather be up on a beach somewhere relaxing and not be in boxing in your 90s, Frank?
I won't be doing it when I'm 90.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I've said that many years ago. I wouldn't be doing it at another age. I think we all say these things. But I definitely won't be doing what Bob does. That's Bob's life. That's what it is. It's his life. I mean, it's my life, but that is his life. I've got 12 grandkids. I've got a big family, and I like being with them. I like seeing them, and I'm a homeboy as well. I like being home. I like being. When I say homeboy, I like being in the UK. I mean, otherwise I'd have moved offshore years ago. My family's got a house down in Portugal, which we've had for a long time. But invariably, I like being here. This is what I like, and whereas years ago, airports, whether you're flying private or whatever, all that was all great, but I hate travelling now. I don't get excited about all the travelling now, all the pissing around at airports and everything. It's changed. The world's changed a lot, hasn't it? And I'm pretty simplistic what I want to do and what I like.
Speaking of changes, big change you mentioned about the move to TNT to DAZN. DAZN, how long is the deal? Can you say how long it's for?
It's a multi-year deal. It's a very long deal.
TNT and the potential that they might stay in the sport.
I don't know what they're going to do. I hope they do, but I don't know what they're going to do. They got some great people there. We made some good friends there. it's not been, it's been no animosity or anything. It was the fact that it was a different direction we needed to be moving in, and we got to a stage where what we set out to do and we said we would do, we did. And we want to now progress that. We want to now move further. So the only way to do that is having sat down with Solen and his team. He's got some great people there. He's got some people who were there from the beginning, and he's got some great additions, some people who I've worked with over the years in the past. And it's made a big difference. The existing team with the new additions, you can see the commitment, and speaking with him is, that's what got the deal over the line. He's determined to make this a success story, and they bring a lot to the party, and we bring a lot to the party. So it's going to be a great partnership between us.
I appreciate that not too much can be said on this, but the news had come out that you'd decided to go the legal route with Chris Eubank Jr. off the back of his comments made at a press conference recently last year. What can you say about that situation with Chris Eubank Jr.?
Yeah, just run the due course now.
Mm-hmm. But the disappointment in the immediacy off of the back of his comments.
Well, it's disappointment. There's apologies made, but he didn't take down the tweets or X's or whatever they call them this day, and postings, and took them down, then reposted them. So was he taking the piss or what?
Fair enough. Another subject as well of contention, that being Dennis McCann. What can you say as to the latest on that?
We are awaiting a date for a hearing, and I haven't seen anything yet. I mean, it's only just after Christmas, but I'm quite sure within the next week, maybe 2 weeks, that there'll be some movement on that. But it needs to be dealt with very quickly, one way or another.
Yeah, from the statements you made on interviews regarding it, it seems like you're sending a different message as to what's been sent before from how other parties maybe handled issues like this. For example, being blunt here, Conor Benn, and how that situation had gone on for a long time, and that made boxing fans very frustrated on that whole situation. Is that part of your thinking as to how to deal with this situation with Dennis?
Look, whatever way it works out for a boxer, and you mentioned how it's been dealt with in the past, and I suppose you're referring to Conor. He was still out. I know he had a couple of fights in America, but he's been out of a British ring for 2.5 years, 3 years. I want to get on with it. If Dennis is innocent and he tells me he has not done anything wrong, and if he can prove that, because this drug thing, PED thing, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's a different way round. So he can establish that, then fine, we'll move forward. If he can't, then there will be consequences, and it'll get dealt with. And that's it. He's a great fighter. 18. He signed me when he was 18. 5 years of work between all of us and these fabulous performances in the ring. And it's so sad. Listen, every fight he's had leading up to the positive test, he's been clean. All the tests he's had, UCAD, VADA test, he's been clean. So it's very frustrating all around, but it's something that has to be dealt with, not pushed. It's not going to be pushed to one side. It's not going to be swept under the carpet. It's going to be dealt with.
On to more of a light note, Frank, I appreciate your response there. Hamzah Sheeraz, one of your leading lights of 2024, are looking for big opportunities. What can we see for Hamzah Sheeraz this year?
Well, he's got a big fight on the 22nd in Riyadh, 22nd of February, on that big card. It's actually probably one of the best cards that they've had when you look at the quality of the fights and the fighters on there. It's a cracking card. He's in a tough fight with Adames. It's a real tough fight for him. But we believe in him, and I believe that he can win the fight. But it won't be easy. It's a tough fight. But he's a quality fighter. And whatever happens, win or lose, he's with us. And I believe he will win a world title. I think he'll win the fight on the 22nd. And if it doesn't work out, he will win a title anyway, because you only got to look at him. He's a quality operator. Again, somebody from a very young age that came on board. He had through the team that he had then. Came on board, and we invested very heavily in him and gave him the opportunities. He's now got a new team behind him, and you know, he's just, he just ticks all the boxes, doesn't he? He's such a good quality fighter.
Half glossed over for the finish from Usyk Fury 2. Daniel Dubois took to the ring to challenge and talk about getting that rematch with OIeksandr Usyk off the back of what happened in Poland. But he is one of your chess pieces, I guess, if you want to put it that way right now, who holds a belt. Prior to Usyk versus Fury, you'd mentioned that you'd be uncomfortable to make Dubois versus Fury in the future. But with Dubois holding the belt and the potential of Fury wanting to get back to the top, does it make you a bit more comfortable to make that matchup between the two?
Look, I've made fights with fighters that we have years and years. I mean, we're doing it for years. The business we're in, it's called professional boxing, and if it happens, those things happen. But I was uncomfortable with some of those fights. It's not like you want to knock. You got two fighters. You don't want to knock one of your fighters off, do you? But it happens, and you know, if that fight down the road happens, that's going to be the choice of the two boxers. That's the truth of the matter. Me, I hope it doesn't. I don't particularly want to see the two of them in the ring together.
So what's the reason for that?
Because I think I'm a bit close to them, too close to them in some ways. You know, and I shouldn't do that. It's business at the end of the day. But I just don't know. I don't know. It's something I don't know. It's I'd find it. It'd make a lot of money, and we are in the professional business. So that's before anybody said, "Oh, but you'll do it for money." That's what we're in it for. It's called professional boxing. But I would feel pretty uncomfortable. You know, my life don't depend on making that fight. It's not going to make any difference to, you know, what I'll be eating or drinking next week. But it's a great fight. There's no doubt about that. It's a great fight. But I would be uncomfortable. I really do mean that.
You must have some dexterity to be able to juggle, what was it, Tyson Fury, Daniel Dubois, Moses Itauma, Lawrence Okoli, Fabio Wardley. The list goes on and on with those heavyweights. David Adelaide as well too, cracking knockout last year. Big Bang, Zhilei Zhang as well. These are all the balls that you're juggling right now, thrown up in the air, and they all want a bite at that title, the cherry there. It. So how do you balance all of those wants and needs?
Balance it by giving them fights. They're all busy. Every one of them are busy. They're all busy fighters. Every single one of them are fighting regularly. Every one of them. And exciting fights, in absolutely exciting fights. And in the various fights they've had this year, the majority of them have been outstanding and in dramatic fights. Really dramatic fights. And you know, we left out Derek Chisora, who's got a big fight up in Manchester on the 2nd. That's a big fight, him and Wallin. That's a tough fight. And look at him and Joe Joyce, what a good fight they had. All these guys, I won't even have to make the fights, because what's going to happen? You're going to become mandatories. You know, the champion's going to have to want to make a voluntary. There's so many good fights there to be made.
Moses was asked about in the Q&A, and he seems to be one of those leading talents. And I saw an interview with Daniel Dubois on Box Nation by Umar yesterday, and he talked about the prospect of, in the future, that being a big fight between Dubois and Itauma. It seems like that's, again, talking about two chess pieces and talking about the threads of the future generations clashing with each other. That might be the fight, that big fight for when the current crop come and retire and leave. That might be the one that everyone's looking for. You may be
right. I mean, you know, Daniel, what is he? He's 7-8 years older than Moses. So, but they're big fights. They're all fight. I mean, these guys are tremendous fighters, and you know, Moses is he's still he's a very young man who wants to go places fast, and you know, some fights will be called for. Like, you know, the fight that Daniel had with Joe Joyce, we didn't make that. That was called for by the Boxing Board of Control. And neither of them would pull out.
Back up their battery issues, technical issues in this day and age as well. Got to use the old functioning batteries.
Battery ran.
No. We'll talk about longevity. They've got not as lot of longevity as yourself, Frank. You're answering the question, though, about the future generation heavyweight fight being the one of Daniel Dubois and Moses Itauma.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fight, you know, that's going to be a fight of each generation, isn't it, with these two guys? No doubt about that, when the time is right for it to happen. But, you know, he's a young man who's going places, Moses. He really, really is establishing himself on the world scene. A lot of people are making him the best young prospect of 2025. I think he's past that stage now, being a prospect. And obviously Daniel doing what he's doing what he's done, and the fights that he's got coming out. He's got a tough fight on the 22nd in Riyadh against Joe Parker. He comes through that, but he fights Usyk. After that, we'll see where Moses is, what stage he's got to. But these are exciting times. These are exciting times, and all these fighters. And in the meantime, we've got all the other guys who you mentioned.
Yeah, Derek Chisora as well, out on the 8th of
He's
February.
on the 8th of February. I wish you'd get it right. Keep telling me it's the 2nd. It's the 8th. Yeah, he's out on the 8th, and that's a tough fight. Him and Wally, it's a tough fight for him. Be an interesting fight.
With Dubois, we see the potential was that he might have had the rematch with Anthony Joshua. With those rematch clauses, one of those things that
there was no rematch clause in that.
Oh, okay, right.
There was no rematch clause, but we said when he kept saying he wanted it, so if you want it, you can have it.
Okay.
But there was no rematch clause.
There we go. That cleans up that one. I thought there was a lot of conversations around the rematch clause, but that's an issue surrounding boxing that boxing fans sometimes get a little bit frustrated with.
Yeah, but the other side of it, I hear that, but if you've got a fight, you've got to protect your fighter's interest. So if my fighter is a champion, he's fighting another guy, somebody else's fighter, and it's a voluntary defence, then I'm going to protect his best interests. And the reason most times you're asking a rematch, what happens if there's a clash of heads or there's a cut and so forth? So I don't want my guy losing a title like that, and that's why there is a rematch clause. And it can also become to the detriment because you might get stuck with it. But what the bottom line of it is what you're doing. You're looking after your client. That's what it's about.
I wanted to ask you as well, being in the game for so long, just the current situation and movement within boxing media and how boxing is covered in general, having seen it for so long. And we got the introduction of TalkSport and I guess now, who are more of a prominent figure within boxing, social media outlets, YouTube outlets such as ourselves, of course, multimedia as well. But what's your current read on the current status of how boxing is being covered, including the newspapers as well?
The newspapers, it's not as well as it used to be. Most newspapers when I started out in the sport, for many, many years had a designated boxing writer. Nowadays they don't. The same with a lot of sports stuff. But then again, newspapers are losing circulations. There's diminishing circulations. Maybe that's because they keep cutting back. I don't know. But they don't cover some of the fights. You don't get a report on some of the fights, and it's all driven. They put the results in sometimes. It's driven by, I don't know, the personality age that we live in. Some stuff like Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul got plenty of space in the newspaper. Most people knew what the result would be. I don't mean it's a foregone conclusion. The fact that he's 58 years of age, what are you expecting? And so that I find that a bit, the newspapers, it's not how it is. Social media, it's huge now, isn't it? That's what's young. I look at my grandkids, they're on these phones all the time. They don't even watch television anymore. They watch stuff on, it's like YouTube if they want to watch something. The one thing that does attract them is live sport. And certainly boxing or football, so that you have to watch that on TV. I find it, for me, and I mean this with a great respect, where you'd do a press conference years ago, you'd have all the hacks there, have the press conference, ask the questions, done, thank you very much. Now the press, because it doesn't come out until the following day in the newspaper, they don't want the stuff that you have, which you'll put online immediately because it makes their stuff an old story, because people want immediate news now. And that for me is a problem, as much that I'll do the same interview 10 or 12 times, and it's a bit tedious. I'm not sure if we do, or maybe a couple of you do it with a couple of the guys who have got big followings, and then maybe do one with everybody together. But I find that tedious.
Sure.
I do find that sometimes boring because it's like the same question. And then there are some guys there, I think, every time I go, there's a new person there, and you all got to start somewhere. But then there's blokes who've got a camera and a mic, and they know nothing about boxing. I know as they're talking to me, they don't understand how the sport works. And you've got to start somewhere. I appreciate that, but when you've got a big show on and it's busy and it's hard work, you try to give them time, but it is frustrating sometimes. And it's, at the end of the day, our job as promoters is to bang the drum, is to bring the attention to the event, to make sure that everybody is aware that it's on, that it's selling, that you're selling your pay-per-view, you're selling your tickets. If it's a Riyadh season, you're selling Riyadh season. Everybody knows what's going on in Riyadh. So we all work collectively to make that happen. And it's much more difficult nowadays than it was in the past. I find that.
Part of the reason I asked that question was when you invited me to the Merlot's restaurant for the DAZN launch. I was quite impressed by just having the conversations with you. You said, look, we don't want just people just to come in and just say everything's great, everything's brilliant. And if there's challenges to paraphrasing you a little bit here, if there's challenges to be made, like make them, but we want them. I just wonder what you think about the position for, I guess, an unbiased voice is still strong enough in boxing.
I think there are. I mean, it's a funny thing. You get when I say unbiased, it's if they're unbiased without an agenda, because most people have an agenda, don't they? They either like you or they don't like you, or they don't like the fights or whatever it is. That's human. That's human nature sometimes. What I just think it should be a level playing field, and you ask your questions, and we give an answer. And if you don't like the answer, you might want to push them, dig or probe a little bit more. I get that. That's journalistic license. That's what you do. That's what a good journalist does. And I get that and understand that. But when somebody keeps going on and on, banging on, because it's something they want it to be right in their head. For example, they'll watch or they don't like a fighter, or they'll watch or they make a prediction on a fight and the fight goes the other way and they still bang on about it. And I know a lot of people say, but you keep saying that about Usyk. But the point I'm making is that, they bang on so much about it that it's not, they're not, and they're there to do a certain job. And, some of that pisses me off. I'll give you, and I'm going to say it again from last year. I was very, very angry. And I met Oliver Brown after the problems with what he had with the show, and sat down at Courtesy. I said, let's go and have a lunch and we'll have a chat. And we went through all the whole thing. I was really pissed off when he referred to Tyson as a petty thug, which is petty criminal. That's dictionary, really. That's the meaning of it. I thought it was disgraceful. And, and it's funny, I read all the newspapers. I'm still old school. I was reading a feature page yesterday in one of the, in the Telegraph, actually. It was about a film director who suffers from bipolar, and they were saying some really nice things about him, and he was like explaining what his problems were with that. And I'm thinking, there's Tyson who's bipolar, and he's a thug according to you because he says something that you don't like. But it's all right to be like, if you're a lovey and you're okay, that's all okay. Let's find an easy target, and that's an easy target. Let's go with him. By the way, they took down the petty thug out of the on the online thing. I wonder why they did that. I just find all that pretty offensive, and I really do find it offensive. And Tyson's not a criminal. He's not been to prison. He's not none of these things. He's gone through. What he's championed for mental health is unbelievable. Bearing his soul and explaining and saying all the things that he's been through in his life, suicidal thoughts, drug abuse, booze abuse, all the things that were going wrong, and that being diagnosed as bipolar. Give somebody some latitude. You should be praising that somebody who has that affliction, whatever you want to call it, that problem. You should be praising them for getting on with life. When he gets, that having that whatever it is, that feeling you got towards him, calling him this and mentioning that and saying all these things, comparing him or slagging him off like you do. Why are you talking about what he does in the ring? What he does in the ring, there's nobody braver than him. As an amateur representing England, I mentioned, won the world title, went abroad and won the world title. Done all these things he's done. And you've been to the fights. Have you not been entertained in any of those fights that he's been involved in? The getting off the floor, how he's got off that floor, showed the courage that he's got and the strength and the mindset to go and do that, representing himself and his country, quite proud of doing it, Union Jack on his shorts, he does all that, and comes from a gypsy Romany background where sometimes people think, where gypsies have been pushed on the outside of society. You've seen he's done all that and he's embrace it, and then you say what was said about him. Talk about what he's done in the ring and what he does outside the ring. He has a medical condition. Go and look at it. As I keep banging on about it, go online, NHS, read the symptoms. You say something. You've got no filter. I mean, sometimes I have to bite my tongue what I'd like to say about to some people, but and that's what it is. But look at his actions in the ring, as I said in the previous interview. What's the first thing that fight, those two great fights that he had with Usyk? He's hugging him and kissing, both of them, arms around each other. That's the actions. That's the feeling. That's the moment they're in. If something's said, it's triggered it, whatever it may be, but that's how he was. Look at him in the fights that he had with Wilder after that fight. He went to Wilder's corner to put his arms around him when he was, he was sitting there. I mean, Wilder, Deontay, for whatever reason, maybe he was out of it. I don't know. He was sort of not, getting into it. But Tyson went to him to put his arms around him and hug him and whatever. And a brutal fight. They were on the floor 3 or 4 times, weren't they, between them? Mm. Unbelievable fights. So, yeah, do I get pissed off when somebody I feel's got sharpened up their pencil to have a go dip into the sport once in a year, maybe twice in a year? You never see them, like you say. They won't be at York Hall. They won't be up in Manchester for a fight, whatever. But when they do come, they're coming with bad intentions, and that's what pisses me off of them. And I find that, and I'll go and defend my man. I'll go and stand up for him and say what I've got to say, and that's it. And that'll upset some people, whatever. But to call him a petty thug, I thought was fucking disgusting.
Just want to follow up on that, and it's a little bit of a personal question, so don't feel obliged to answer it, but it's part of the reason for your staunch defence, of course, of Tyson Fury, because of seeing the mental health issues that Tyson has had with the bipolar, and also your family member having schizophrenia and kind of dealing with that. Is that part of kind of why you're so...
Well, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that's me being not giving as much time as I should have done to my young brother Mark, who was schizophrenic. And I was travelling a lot all over the place, doing what you're doing, was younger. And I wish I'd have given him more time. I didn't. I seriously feel guilty about that. And I do. And I see, what people, you will say something. He will say, things he said. And I looked at him sometimes. And, it's tough. Anyway, can we hold up for just a second?
Absolutely. Just picking that back up there, Frank. Just wanted to ask you just a follow-up on that as well. Again, feel free, you don't have to answer this if you don't like to, because it's a little bit personal, but it's also a bit of a soft spot for myself, because I also have a dear friend of mine who I go see regularly who's schizophrenic, and I make a thing to make sure to go see him as much as I possibly can, just to have a cup of tea with him and just check in on him as regular as possible. As much as you like to share, what was it like kind of being around your brother?
Well, I wasn't around him a lot. He was 14 years younger than me, which is a big gap when you're kids, you know what I mean? Like 14, I'd left home. I was hardly at home after the age of 15, to be quite honest. I just feel, like I was saying earlier, because you're working, as we mentioned earlier in the interview, it's like 24/7. You're flying here, you're flying there, you're doing this and that. And sometimes you don't give the time. My phone would go, like we'd be doing, like for example, the phone would ring now and we're doing an interview and it'd be Mark, and I couldn't take the call, so I'd wait, then obviously catch up. But then I've had about 10 calls and it's like suddenly what you feel you're prioritising in your life, in your return calls wasn't the one. He needed me at that moment. That's why he drank. It might have been nothing. It might have been just absolutely a nothing call. But you have to do what you're saying. You go and, like you're saying, your friend, you do a fantastic thing to do that with your friend, to show him that you care and you're there for him. And mental illness is, somebody's got a terrible facial disfigurement, or they lose a leg or an arm or whatever. You can see that. Mental health you can't see. It's an awful, not just for them as well, for the family. For the family. In fact, my mother had a tough time with it, and I hate to say it, she passed away when he committed suicide. And in some ways, that's a blessing that she weren't there for it. But it's awful. No one knows what to do for the best. All you can do is do it. But to not recognise that somebody has it, and you're trying to push them away, and especially in this day and age where we're all trying to be open society and saying, right, somebody has this, and this is something, what can we do to deal with it? I mean, you look what's happened over the years now in this country, and how much, the NHS, all the pressure it's under, that the help that was there years ago isn't there. It doesn't seem to be there today how it was. Maybe because of money, who knows? I mean, I don't know. But the whole thing's awful, and that's why I take my hat off to Tyson. And I know that things he's done, and I know the letters we get here to us to pass on, or they whatever, and Tyson say open them and send them on. I've read some of them that's been sent, and they're inspirational, and he's inspired people. So he's inspired more people than some of these journalists have, who had a pop at him, and just this, and they're dismissive of some things, and it's and again, they're upsetting some things that he may have said and other people have said. My brother may have said. They're upsetting, I get it, but you've got to understand sometimes where maybe it's coming from, and it might be a true feeling. I mean, I've certainly said a few things that have upset people over the years. I know that, and whatever. But I don't know. I just if anybody in their family has these problems, it's a big problem for families, then they should get all the support they can, and the understanding, more importantly. And I know it's difficult, and I wish I'd have done more, and to give the time to you, if it's one of your family, give them the time and try and help them and be there for them.
Just last thing on that, how did your family kind of deal with the situation as a whole? You mentioned about yourself, but your family as a whole, how did they deal with that situation?
It was difficult. My dad was still alive at the time. My sister, my other brother Robert, my sister Christine, and it was just out of the blue. I can remember my wife Susan coming in. I was asleep. I was in bed. It was around, must have been about 11:30 something at night, and she came and woke me up, and she said, and she told me, she said, you got to go. The police have been on, or one of my family had rung, or whatever it was, and first of all I thought it was my brother Robert. She said, your brother's been in an accident. That's what I was told at first, and I thought it was Robert, and it turned out it was Mark, and he'd jumped off a balcony. And that was it.
I can't imagine what that call had been like, Frank, back then.
Well, it was when we got there was the worst thing. You get down there and you're looking. There's nothing you can do. The police were there, the ambulance was there. We drove to London because we live outside London. Got there very quickly, and the police were very good. They took us to there was a little hotel nearby, and they got a room there. We went and sat in there, and that was it. It was just bloody awful. It was awful, and it's funny as time's gone on, which is it's pretty useless, but you feel more. You feel you could have done more, and you should have done more, and this and that, and I do feel that way, and I'm quite. You can't turn back the clock. It doesn't happen. So what you can try and do is is help. And I've seen, and mental health is a tough issue, especially in this day and age. The pressure, the drugs taking, the cannabis. They want to legalise it. I don't get all these things. I just might, because that's how my young brother started out, smoking lots and lots of dope, and how anyone wants to legalise that, because it's a matter of course. You go from one to the next thing, and it's all it's a nonsense. But it's prevalent now, especially with all the pressures that people have. And anybody who's not well should know that there are people there who are there for them.
Appreciate you sharing that honesty with me, Frank. A lovely sentiment there shared. I don't want to end the interview on a somber note, so I'll hopefully bring the spirits up a little bit. And I want to end the interview with, I think this is an easy answer, but Queensberry Promotions next world champion, Hamzah Sheeraz, is that right? If it's not Hamzah,
I think he can do it. I really do feel he can do it. He's got it within him to do it. He's a good fighter. He's a good quality fighter. He's got a good jab. He can box. He can punch. He took a couple of shots in that fight he had on the 5v5. He got caught a couple of times and took a couple of good shots. He's in with a good fighter, but he has the wherewithal and the capability to go and do this.
Queensberry Promotions breakout fighter of 2025. Who do you think that will be?
Bloody hell! I tell you what, we've got so many good. And I can't upset. I'm going to upset. I mean, I can see Sam Noakes doing something this year. Moses broke out last year. He's a prospect of the. A lot of people saying he's a prospect of the year. Him, bloody hell, we've got to get him back on track. Mr. Chamberlain. We need to get him back on it. Mark back on track. There's so many good young fighters that we've got are going to break out. Fabio. What I mean by they all broke out last year. Now to move on to the next level, and there are some great opportunities for some fighters. He got his career back on track. David Adelaide in a big way. Lawrence Okoli. Look what he's done at heavyweight. I mean, that was a bit of a statement he made, wasn't it? All the stuff we got. I mean, a lot of people were trying to give me stick over him, and I genuinely felt all the way through. I'm looking at this fella. How on earth do you make this weight? How did you ever make the weight? You won 2 world titles at that weight. You must have been drained. And I think with fighters like that, sometimes when they feel their weight drain, I feel it's like they're conserving energy because they worry about getting to later rounds. Because they're tired, because they're because they've struggled so much to make the weight. But I think looking what he did last time out against a decent fighter, I think he announced himself well and truly on the world stage. There's him. I mean, we got a wealth of him. Like young Nick Ball, look what he's done. He's got to go and unify some titles there. And look at the guys in the stable there. I mean, there's that blue triangle. There's some great fighters there. Young Ryan Garner. I could go on and on, I'm sure. Young Royston. It's about, we're going to step him up this year. Liam Davis coming back. I mean, Nathan. And there's a stagger number. And I do apologise for anybody I missed out. Remember, I'm an old geezer. But we're in good shape, and there's some good fighters to come through. The one thing is you're all going to get your opportunities, and you all got to go and grasp them with both those hands and go and show what you're all about, because you're all good fighters. You're all good quality fighters. That's why you're with Queensberry.
Frank, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time here. I've been knocking on the door for a while, so it's great to...
I apologise.
No, it's okay. It's just how things happen. But I'm glad to have had this conversation with you for however long it's been. So much appreciated. Looking forward to this year in boxing. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
God bless you.